The official ruling on Jeffrey Epstein's death? Suicide by hanging. But some say it's murder, and some believe Epstein's alive. If so, did the Trump DOJ put him in protective custody? Did the Mossad whisk him away to Israel? Or was he kidnapped by the deep state to prevent him from triggering a dead man's switch? Who has him? The truth is about to be unsealed. The apparent murder of Jeffrey Epstein is sending shockwaves around the world, jolting more people awake to the fact that the deep state is so dangerous that even prisoners are not safe from being murdered. It has now become apparent to every thinking person that America is occupied by an enemy force, a corrupt criminal cartel known as Democrats, who will kill anyone that gets in their way or threatens their power. Jeffrey Epstein, of course, could have testified to the fact that Bill Clinton is a serial rapist and child abuser whose perverted crimes have been covered up by the complicit left-wing media for decades. But what if President Trump and William Barr knew Epstein was about to be murdered and took steps to secure him in a safe location so that his testimony could also be secured? Epstein could be the key to bring down the Democrat deep state traitors whose leaders have long been tied to child trafficking, video blackmail, and satanic child molestation rituals. Testimony from Epstein could topple the entire house of cards and expose the sick satanic child sacrifice and rape rituals that high-level Democrats have been carrying out for decades. That's why this alternate theory is at least worth considering. Now, although it's impossible to know whether this is true, there appears to be photographic evidence that the dead body carted out of Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell was not the body of Epstein. The body was swapped, according to some analysts who are looking very closely at the evidence. The most likely explanation of all this remains, in my view, the simpler theory that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered by deep state operatives connected to the Clintons, even though his death has officially been ruled a suicide. After all, the Clintons have been surrounded by a long list of mysterious deaths, suicides, and body bags. The number of ex-Clinton bodyguards, accountants, and business associates who have been killed is truly astounding. And the suspicious events at the prison where Epstein was being held continue to mount. For example, why is there no video footage of Epstein killing himself? Why were the guards pulled away? Why was Epstein removed from suicide watch? Why was Epstein's cellmate removed from his cell just 1 day earlier? Even Attorney General William Barr has questions. Attorney General William Barr says he was appalled and angry at the failure to adequately secure Jeffrey Epstein. He said, quote, "We are now learning of serious irregularities at this facility that are deeply concerning and demand a thorough investigation." According to IntelliHub, which ran some of the best investigatory journalism following the Las Vegas mass shooting, the photograph of a body being removed from Epstein's jail cell appears to depict the body of a man who isn't Epstein at all. Now, we haven't yet confirmed the origins of these photos or the conclusions of the analysis, but it's a theory worth considering since, to many, the face profiles don't seem to match. The nose in particular doesn't seem to be the same nose as Jeffrey Epstein. Adding to the mystery, according to IntelliHub, a worker at the prison posted a message to 4chan that's recorded as being posted 10 minutes before the media broke the story of Epstein's death. According to this post, which has not yet been authenticated, so take it with a grain of salt, it says, quote, not saying anything after this. Please do not try to dox me, but last night, after 04:15, they took him, Epstein, to medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one triage nurse says they spoke to him. Next thing we know, vans show up. We do not do releases on weekends unless a judge orders it. Next thing we know, he's put in a single-man cell and hangs himself. Here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in, and we did not record the plate number, and a guy with a green dress military outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy that led him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. This apparent post seems to indicate that a military person arrived and swapped out Jeffrey Epstein alive with a dead body that sort of resembled Jeffrey Epstein. Is this true? Well, you decide. Be skeptical of all of this, of course. There are many potential theories about what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. Because the evidence is being so aggressively covered up, none of us have proof yet that any particular narrative is accurate. One thing we know for sure, however, is that the establishment media is lying to us all. The obvious question at this point, then, is who would want to remove Jeffrey Epstein and keep him alive? Well, there are only really two possibilities for this. The first possibility is that William Barr and President Trump ordered him moved to a safe location to secure his testimony and help bring down the deep state. The second possibility is that the deep state, in other words, the Clintons, kidnapped him to torture him and kill him. But this explanation doesn't make much sense either, because it's much easier for them to just kill him in his own cell and be done with it. There's no rational reason to remove him from his cell only to kill him somewhere else. Thus, the only remaining explanation, if you believe he was swapped out with another body, is that the DOJ and Trump had him moved to secure his testimony. Now, there's also a wild card theory out there that Epstein worked for Mossad and that Mossad snuck into the jail cell and swapped him out. But that seems beyond far-fetched to this reporter at this point, even for conspiracy analysts. The most recent bombshell news is that the official autopsy results for Jeffrey Epstein have been released. Now, even though they ruled it a suicide, according to mainstream media outlets such as the Washington Post, a mouthpiece for the deep state, of course, Jeffrey Epstein's neck bones were broken in a manner that is consistent with strangulation. As reported by True Pundit, quote, an autopsy found that financier Jeffrey Epstein sustained multiple breaks in his neck bones, according to two people familiar with the findings, deepening the mystery about the circumstances around his death. Among the bones broken in Epstein's neck was the hyoid bone, which in men is near the Adam's apple. Jonathan Arden, president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, said a hyoid bone can be broken in many circumstances, but is more commonly associated with homicidal strangulation than suicidal hanging. Now remember, this is what the establishment wants the public to believe. It's the official finding. The establishment, in other words, wants the public to believe that Jeffrey Epstein was likely murdered, since that's what the autopsy evidence strongly supports, even though the official death was ruled a suicide. Don't think for a minute that autopsies of such high-profile deaths are carried out with a sense of transparency or truth. It's all about shaping the message for a strategic purpose. And this autopsy in particular was carried out by medical examiner Barbara Sampson, with Dr. Michael Baden observing. Dr. Michael Baden is, of course, the very same person who oversaw the autopsy of JFK after he was shot and killed by the deep state in 1963. Yes, Dr. Baden's career spans that many decades. Dr. Baden was also involved in the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. investigation and even served as an expert witness in the defense of O.J. Simpson. Now, if you think Dr. Michael Baden isn't connected to the highest levels of globalist deep state power, you're clueless about the history of the world in which you live. If the establishment wants you to think Jeffrey Epstein is dead, it's only because he isn't dead. He's still alive, and he has obviously been moved to another location to be grilled by the people who now have him. The only real question is, who carried out the body swap? The evidence leans toward a military team operating under the orders of President Trump. Jeffrey Epstein was rescued, the theory goes, so that his testimony could be secured to help bring down the deep state. Jeffrey Epstein can name names, and he no doubt has elaborate records and video files showing the world's powerful elite having sex with underage girls or boys. A clever blackmailer like Epstein would have obviously made multiple copies of this evidence and hidden those copied in many locations, probably connected to a dead man's switch that would release files if he doesn't check back in from time to time. The proper way to set this up, by the way, is to digitize all the video files and encrypt the files using strong encryption. The decryption key is placed under the control of an unaffiliated third party who is instructed to post the decryption keys in a public forum if the original control person, Epstein, doesn't check in and provide a password or proof of life every 48 to 72 hours. Simultaneously, independent teams that are tasked with holding the encrypted files are instructed to watch various public forums for keyword-triggered postings of a decryption key. If such a key appears, they are instructed to decrypt the files they possess using the decryption key that has been publicly posted. Once the decryption is complete, they are instructed to post the decrypted video files to various locations, which may include video sites, 4chan, Reddit, etc. This is the basic structure of a so-called dead man's switch involving digital files. Now, once you understand this, it's not difficult to realize that kidnapping and torturing Jeffrey Epstein would give you control over the dead man's switch. Under duress, Epstein could either be forced to prevent the release of the files or to trigger their release, depending on what the kidnapping party wants to see happen. The fact that no bombshell video files or other evidence has yet been publicly released is very nearly proof that Epstein is still alive. In fact, it's strong evidence that Epstein is being allowed to or forced to reset the countdown triggers on the dead man switches. Two scenarios are now possible, depending upon which party took Epstein alive. So the only question is, who has him? Is it the Trump camp or the Clinton camp? If Trump operatives have Epstein, the playbook runs like this. Step 1, fake the autopsy and report to the world that Epstein was murdered or suicided. Step 2, force Epstein to keep resetting his dead man switches so that blackmail evidence doesn't get publicly released yet, providing time for Trump's military operatives to interview Epstein on camera and gather bombshell evidence that names deep state Democrats as child sex predators. Step 3, protect Epstein until he can testify in court. Continue to promote the narrative that Epstein has been killed, thereby dissuading the Clinton deep state from trying to find him and murder him. Step 4, at some point, allow Epstein's files to be released by blocking him from resetting the dead man switches. The timing of this is crucial. It must happen near the time that Epstein's newly recorded video testimony is also released to the world, probably around the time the DOJ files criminal charges against the deep state Democrats. Now, if Clinton operatives have Epstein, the playbook runs like this. Step 1, torture Epstein to force him to reset his dead man switches every 48 hours or so, thereby preventing the release of his blackmail files. Step 2, keep torturing Epstein in an effort to get him to disclose his dead man switch contacts in the hopes of tracking them down and disabling those switches. Step 3, find all the blackmail material and destroy it. This is the job of the FBI, of course, which now exists as the Clinton Crimes Cover-Up Committee, which is the whole point of the FBI recently raiding Jeffrey Epstein's Orgy Island. The goal wasn't to find evidence of crimes, but to destroy evidence of crimes. The FBI is now totally corrupt and functions as a criminal crime syndicate. Step 4, murder Epstein and dump his body somewhere that will never be found. The bottom line? If the Clinton deep state operatives have Epstein, he's probably having his skin peeled off right now. If Trump operatives have Epstein, he's probably being interviewed and interrogated to divulge everything he knows. That evidence would likely be timed to coincide with the coming DOJ criminal indictments of corrupt deep state officials like James Comey and John Brennan. Either way, Jeffrey Epstein is going to burn in hell. The only question is whether some of the other Democrats will join him after being exposed for the sicko pedophiles they truly are. Let's hope Trump's people have Epstein. Presently, I give that about a 70-30 odds. Or I suppose you could just believe the official story and conclude that the government always tells you the truth. Yeah. And JFK was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald, too. And Oklahoma City was carried out by Timothy McVeigh. If you believe all that, you'll probably believe anything the government tells you. So take your vaccine shots, eat your GMOs, and trust Google on everything. You don't believe in conspiracy theories, remember? And there's a chemotherapy clinic waiting for you, too, so that your brain can be damaged to the point where you don't even remember what it's like to be a free citizen. Other developments in the Jeffrey Epstein story. Jeffrey Epstein spent at least 2 hours locked up alone with a mystery woman, possibly part of his legal team, just a day after he was taken off suicide watch at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, according to a new report. A visiting attorney who asked that his name not be used told Forbes that he saw the young woman with Epstein on July 30th when the disgraced financier was transferred into the facility's special housing unit. The attorney told the outlet, quote, "The optics were startling because she was young and pretty." He speculated that the woman could be a lawyer, as the multimillionaire paid members of his legal team to visit him for nearly 8 hours a day so he could avoid his jail cell and sit in a room designated for attorney meetings. This, according to NBC News. The visiting attorney told Forbes that when he visited that day, Epstein's main lawyer, Reed Weingarten, wasn't there, and neither were any of his other known attorneys. It was only the mystery woman. The lawyer said, "If I was him, I would have hired an old, bald guy." The woman didn't seem to be carrying any files and was dressed casually, leading the attorney to believe that she was a first-year associate, according to the report. It was slacks and a blouse, according to him. Could have been jeans or another kind of pants, but like Sunday brunch attire that she was wearing. He added, "I think she was there just to babysit him and keep him out of his jail cell and just keep him company for 8 hours a day," which is not supposed to be the way it works. Also, the body of Epstein has been claimed by an unknown and unnamed associate and taken from the New York City Medical Examiner's office, according to a new report. Just days after the apparent suicide of the billionaire sex trafficker in his Manhattan jail cell, the mystery around his passing continued to grow. Both federal and local officials have launched investigations into his death, which reportedly came after he had been taken off suicide watch. Epstein was being held in the Federal Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan on charges of underage sex trafficking at the time of his death. As NBC News reported, Epstein's body was claimed by someone described as an Epstein associate, though the person's name was not revealed. As the report noted, some close family and friends had vouched for Jeffrey Epstein when his lawyers were fighting to have him released on bond. According to the report, and according to court documents, Epstein's lawyers said the bond would have been co-secured by his brother Mark Epstein and a friend identified as David Mitchell. Epstein's death came close to 2 weeks after he'd been found injured in his jail cell with injuries to his neck, which were described by some reports as an attempted suicide. There are some potential clues about Epstein's passing. Writings described as a potential suicide note were reportedly found in Jeffrey Epstein's jail cell after his death, which investigators are now searching for clues about his death. As Radar Online reported, the writings appear to give some insight into what Epstein was thinking in his final days before he reportedly hanged himself in his cell. The source told the outlet it appears that at first look it's just Jeffrey's thoughts about what he was going through, his emotional state. There are also questions about why Epstein was left alone for such a long period of time on the morning of his death. Reports indicated that guards left Epstein alone for close to 2 hours before his death, despite what had been described as a suicide attempt just days before. As CBS News reported, there was shouting and shrieking heard from Epstein's cell on the morning of his death. And again, Jeffrey Epstein's autopsy found multiple neck bone fractures, which can be caused by suicidal hanging, which is, of course, the official ruling, but more commonly found in homicidal strangulation. The mystery deepens about the death of this billionaire with secrets. Now, Attorney General William Barr has expressed outrage at the death of Jeffrey Epstein and demanded a federal investigation. As head of the Department of Justice, Barr oversees the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which runs the facility where Epstein was being held on sex trafficking charges. And adding to the mystery, Ghislaine Maxwell was seen at a Los Angeles In-N-Out restaurant last week, apparently reading the Book of Honor, The Secret Lives and Deaths of CIA Operatives. Ghislaine Maxwell, of course, the alleged madam of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, was spotted reading the Book of Honor, The Secret Lives and Deaths of CIA Operatives, in her first public sighting since Epstein's death. Sales of the Book of Honor by journalist Ted Gupp surged after the New York Post reported that Maxwell was spotted reading it at a Los Angeles In-N-Out. And as of this past Friday morning, the Book of Honor was sold out on Amazon. This book on the secret lives and deaths of CIA operatives is sold out on Amazon, completely sold out. And on Thursday, the New York Post reported that Maxwell was seen there at this Los Angeles In-N-Out reading the Book of Honor, The Secret Lives and Deaths of CIA Operatives. It is a non-fiction book. Gupp's The Book of Honor investigates CIA operatives who died in the line of duty, focusing on agents whose service was kept a secret even after death. Gupp did not immediately return anyone's calls and requests for comment on Maxwell being spotted reading the book. Gupp has reported extensively on government secrecy, including being the first to report on a secret bunker hidden in the luxury Greenbrier Resort in 1992. The bunker, which was decommissioned after Gupp's reporting, was intended as a secret relocation point for Congress in the case of a national emergency. Epstein's death in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, where his body was found Saturday morning, has sparked speculation and conspiracy theories. Epstein, of course, was facing several federal charges of sex trafficking involving underage girls when he died by apparent suicide. So, is Epstein still alive? That's the question. All of this brings us to the possibility that Jeffrey Epstein may still be alive, and he may be in U.S. military custody, where he's about to offer all kinds of video-recorded testimony naming all the high-level Democrats who paid him money to sexually abuse teen girls and boys. Or perhaps this is all just wishful thinking, and the truth is that Epstein is as dead as a rock. Dead men don't talk, and they especially don't talk about the Clintons. Oh, by the way, the left-wing media, run by absolute morons and traitors, now says that if you don't believe the official explanation of Jeffrey Epstein committing suicide, then you're a conspiracy theorist. These are the same media loons who've been pushing a wildly fabricated Russia collusion conspiracy theory for nearly the last 3 years. Their conspiracies aren't conspiracies, you see, but your conspiracies are conspiracy theories. And that's how the deranged left-wing media operates, which is exactly why no intelligent person in America trusts anything the media reports anymore. There will no doubt be a lot more breaking news and possibly evidence about Jeffrey Epstein in the days ahead. But if he's alive and being held by the DOJ or the U.S. military, his testimony could implode the entire Democrat Party, which has been run by child traffic rapists and sex abusers for many decades. Jeffrey Epstein could truly be the ultimate weapon to bring down the shadow government dominated by Democrats. That is, unless he's already at room temperature. Don't trust the media. Trust your instincts on this one. While you're at it, the assassination of JFK was also a deep state cover-up run by the corrupt FBI in the 1960s. So you might want to pick up a few books by Jim Marrs and get educated about reality, because the deep state has been running psyops on the American people since at least World War II. Only now has a president arrived that could start to challenge the occupying enemy force, that is, deep state swamp creatures who have been mind-controlling America for generations. Things are about to get interesting.